I'm on the phone with Anne from Pikapi Podcast, and in a little bit of an interruption in our discussions of the Pokemon movies, we've skipped ahead to the latest movie that was released, Movie 20, Pokemon I Choose You. And yeah, we're going to be talking about the ending themes to this one. So we sort of have an interesting structure here. We have two sort of main songs, and then there's a third one we're going to splice in a little bit ways in. We'll get into that, but we're going to keep this for this first couple segments to just being Japanese versus English as we usually do. So on the Japanese side, we have Let's Walk Together, which is derived from the Aracion theme from the 10th movie, and is performed by Asuca Hayashi, who many of you will remember also did A Small Thing back in movie 6, which was translated into Make a Wish for the English version of that movie. On the English side, we have Haven Paschall, hope I said that right, who performs I Choose You, written by the usual folks there. Ed Goldfarb is sort of the main one on that. So our first segment, as usual, is going to be talking about the artist. Now, of course, Asuka Hayashi, we went into her career in a fair amount of depth last year when we covered movie 6. And you do have maybe a little bit of information about what's gone on since then, as well as some information about who actually wrote the lyrics for this, because it was originally an instrumental from movie 10, right?
Right. There's not a ton of information on Asuka. As I mentioned in that episode where we discussed A Small Thing, Chisaki Mono, she's not been super active in recent years. She is still a professional musician, but, in 2013, she got married, they have a kid, she's pursuing other things in her life, so it's really kind of special that she's come back for this movie. It's the first single she's released in a very long time. And as you can hear in the track itself, she sounds a little different than her 13-year-old self. But yeah, the lyrics I found kind of interesting because they are written by Futoshi of a band called Aqua Times, which, if you're really into anime or J-drama, you've probably heard them before. They're quite a famous and respected band in Japan, doing stuff for, Bleach and Gokusen and things like that. They officially started in 2003. The current band members they gathered formed Aqua Times and kind of went up through the independent music scene and signed to Epic Records in 2006. And they've kind of just been going strong ever since. A couple albums, 5 or 6, maybe more, several singles, they're still active and still going. So I think they're definitely a band you want to check out if you're kind of interested in looking into more Japanese music. And their lyrics, I find, are very unusual. They're not placid, and you can kind of see that in this. There's even though it's kind of that universal thing of let's do everything together, they're very poetic about tying into the things of Pokemon that I like.
Sounds really neat. I don't suppose you have any information on how all of this got arranged, who went back to Asuka, or how the other band got involved in writing lyrics for this?
Not especially, but the more I look into the media surrounding Movie 20, there was a huge push to kind of tie together old generations and new generations of fans, in the sense of Shoku Nakakawa, Shokutan, she's voicing Nurse Joy and is kind of being presented as the face of Pokemon because she came up through the entire franchise. So I think this may have been part of that, reaching out to someone who did a previous and beloved ending theme and, having a new song written for her to sing might be part of that. Just another way to just tie in one more thing from this entire series and kind of celebrate the anniversary. But no, I've not found a lot of specific stuff about, why Asuka and not, some other group or something, but
I suppose so. All right, well, on the English side, Haven Paschall, that's a name that should actually be decently familiar. She is probably best known for being Serena's voice actor in the English dub. She is actually still active in the dub right now. I think her most prominent role in Sun and Moon is as Rockruff. So that's where she's working there. But she's also done some other songs in the Pokemon anime. She did joined the band, which was from one of the shorts of the sixth generation. And she also just recently was kind of revealed as performing Under the Alolan Moon, which is the new dub theme that just came out. I have actually not heard it yet. I do look forward to that at some point, but I'm actually kind of a far ways back in the main series anime, so I have some catching up to do in that regard. As I mentioned earlier, it's written by Ed Goldfarb, which ever since Generation 6 has been the writing team, more or less. I think there was one or two people who may have helped out with some of this, but that's basically what that is. And so maybe not a whole lot to say there. I think it's pretty obvious how Haven ended up doing this, at least in abstract, I would say. So maybe not a huge story there either.
It's still pretty cool, though, to have, again, that on both sides, the English and the Japanese, they tied in people who are already associated. Like for the anniversary movie, there's something special in that, I think.
Yeah, not the worst choice they could have gone with.
Right.
Well, let's talk about these songs stylistically. So, Let's Walk Together, as we mentioned earlier, is based on the Oracion theme from movie 10, The Rise of Darkrai.
Mm-hmm.
But how would you describe the actual instrumentation of this version of it?
Well, it's sort of got a nice pop sort of beat to it. Like, I was expecting it to be all ballad, but it's got a bit of a blend, I think, which is typical of Asuka Hayashi. Like, she is kind of sort of a pop fusion sort of thing. So it kind of starts out with that very melodic theme of Oracion and kind of the, power ballady instrumentation and sort of an instrumental score, but that, it kind of gets to be a bit of a driving beat inside of it and kind of goes on to be just a nice pop ballad.
Yeah, it's a decidedly different arrangement from, how it's used in the score of the 10th movie.
Yeah.
So very much had to go through quite a transition or migration to become a vocal song.
Yeah, it's definitely a surprise from what I think people expected when we heard the title, but very interesting.
What about those words they added? What is the song talking about?
Tomo ni aruko, let's walk together. So it kind of what it says on the tin, but it's kind of a song of a journey, and it's the word choices they use, I feel, are like really specific to a Pokemon journey and the journey of the series and the franchise. So it just calls out all the values that Pokemon has been preaching for forever. There's the usual thing, like, let's traverse the world, let's laugh it out. We can embrace anyone's weakness when we've kind of improved ourselves, those sorts of things. Yeah, like, it's just something about the word choice is just very reminiscent of everything that's come before. It almost feels like this is a song from the point of view of the fans, like our journey through Pokemon. There's a very nostalgic feel. It doesn't feel like this journey is taking place in the present. It feels like something that has been building for a while.
So I suppose thematically, not stylistically, but thematically, you might want to compare this to, just so you know, we're going to be making a lot of references to prior movie soundtracks and whatnot in this episode, as you might have expected. But Together with the Wind, how does this kind of compare to that?
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah, because Together with the Wind kind of has a lot of those same vibes, but it's very melancholic, and you're kind of just starting out, and you don't see the end of the journey in sight. Whereas here, it's like you've climbed the mountain, you're looking at the peak, and you're like, let's look back at how far we've come, and then decide if we keep going. And it's very triumphant in that sense. You could be calling back a lot of those themes. Oh, and yeah, there's like a lot of stuff about like hearing the voice of the wind and the wind on your, and like the pressure on your back pushing, like, oh my goodness. Yeah, I definitely think there are some parallels there, and I wonder how deeply Futoshi was considering that when he was writing the lyrics.
Be very interesting to know that. We're discussing something that was originally an instrumental piece that has had words added to it. Do you feel that worked out reasonably well? Were there any parts where it seems like they kind of had to fudge things a little bit to make it work?
Maybe a little bit, but nothing glaring, like nothing like that made you feel as a listener like, what are they doing? This is contrived. I definitely think the theme of Oracion is more present in the instrumentation than in the lyrics. Like, it's not an adaptation that I would have recognized as such, I think, if it wasn't in the title. Does that make sense? Like, I don't think I would have noticed that this was Oracion.
Really? I mean, that was not the experience I had. Now, my Japanese knowledge is extremely minimal. I understood basically nothing of the lyrics when I listened to this song, but I mean, I could sort of beat for beat, definitely pick stuff out. Now, we talked about Oracion, obviously, in our Rise of Darkrai episode.
Mm-hmm.
And, there we talked about sort of the constraints that were put on there because it's supposed to be produced by a set of bells within a tower, which has some mechanical aspects to it. And they sort of... And I was just kind of curious when I asked that question, is there any part they had to kind of work their way around or whatever like that? But
well, yeah, that's what I mean. Like, part of what makes Oracion what it is its context and its instrumentation and that resonance, where it's like the notes are there, but the musical feel is so completely different in the song. And that's good. Like, that's not... I don't feel like it's contrived because you don't want that same feeling of grandeur. Like, we are looking at a cathedral and like I may be touched by God at some moment, like, So I think that works for it. But I definitely would say the musical end of the song, the emotion it elicits is completely different, and that is in the instrumentation. Even if the melody is the same, it has a very different feel.
Yeah, it's definitely not like a straight-up cover or anything like that with just added vocals. I did not get that impression. It adds a decent amount of newness to it, even as someone like me who has virtually no understanding of the Japanese language, so...
Yeah, and that's like an interesting choice, and I think probably the right one for this project. Like, if you're going to tie in stuff from the past, but also come away with your own thing, this was probably the way to go.
I guess I should ask, are there any other instrumentals within Pokemon, we'll keep it to the Japanese side for now, that you would think would be a good candidate for adding lyrics to if the need arises?
Well, with that new movie trailer coming out that I'm still not sure what to think about, they did play a tiny bit of Furura's theme, which is probably what's going to be Lugia's song when that movie gets adapted. So that might be a candidate to consider this question on.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. They did have the, with the legendary themes when they did the Hoopa movie in the dub, they kind of had to work around some stuff there, I suppose. But, all right, well, let's head back to the English side then. Let's talk about sort of the presentation, the sound, the lyrics of I Choose You. Now, I think the thing I noticed, despite being, having spent years playing the cello and in choir and stuff, I am not great with time signatures, but I definitely feel like this one is 3/4. It seems like a waltz, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's got a different rhythm to it than the standard 4/4 beat, yeah. Without actually looking at the score.
Yeah, we don't have the sheet music in front of us, unfortunately. Although, I did want to mention that this and some of the other Ed Goldfarb era music just did recently come out digitally. You can buy it on Amazon, iTunes, listen on Spotify officially as music. And I did want to put that in there. That's like the first time in a decade they've done that with some of the dub anime music. So that was a big deal there. But no sheet music for this one, unfortunately. In any case, I think that gives it a very different vibe. It's not the only waltz-like thing. I don't remember if the dancing scene from movie 8 uses a 3/4 time thing or not, but it is sort of that nature. And to be honest, it kind of gives me, one of two pictures. It's either Ash dancing with someone in a Pikachu costume or Pikachu on stilts, but humorous images aside, the actual instrumentation has a very airy feel to it, very floaty feel to it. Is that about what you got?
Yeah. Just to go back, I think you just gave me new cosplay ideas for the Anime Bonsai formal ball, but yeah, no, I definitely do get a very light, waltzy, kind of flowy, soft feel out of this song, yeah.
Well, let's talk about the lyrics. I'm having trouble remembering them word for word. I think it starts off, what? Here comes trouble, no mistaking.
No mistaking,
I've seen you before.
I'd know you anywhere.
I know you anywhere, that's right.
I've got them pulled up in front of me. These, like the last song we just talked about, these have what seem to be kind of very universal and simplistic lyrics in like the sense of, it's we're just too good together, friendship, and did we just scale the mountain journeys? But the word choices are just a little bit particular and unique. And I really love the second verse that starts out, hello stranger, don't I know you, nice to see you, my friend. There's a juxtaposition there that we don't often see, I think, in a lot of the Pokemon, especially stuff that was written especially for this series. And like with Tomo ni Aruko, I kind of think this song is almost more from the point of view of the fans who have been on this Pokemon journey than any of the characters in the movie. If you've not seen the movie, this is the one that's out of time. So we're seeing these familiar characters in this familiar story that is still technically a stranger to us. But we see the strangers and it's like, oh, these are our friends and we're immediately bonded. There's something about this song that kind of seems to highlight that.
It also might be calling out to sort of the lapsed fan, because there's a very decent size of the audience that has probably not seen a Pokemon movie or watched the anime since the first couple seasons who would be inclined to go to this movie.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't rule out that being a call into that.
Yeah, I could just go through these lyrics forever. There's just so many things of, like what we've shared from the start. And the chorus about, I choose you onto journeys anew. It could apply to Ash and Pikachu in the movie, but the way they word it just makes it feel like, no, this is my choice as a viewer to keep going on with this. I don't know.
I suppose. I do want to go back to the mountain statement, though, that you made there. It is something that is very prominent in the last quarter of this movie. They do actually climb a mountain to contact Ho-Oh in there, so...
And fly back home again.
I suppose so. We don't actually see that part until they get to the Pokemon Center and sort of the epilogue, but yeah.
We assume.
Well, we compared the Japanese one to the first Japanese ending theme. I think it would be warranted to do the same here to the original English movie ending theme. And in case you haven't seen that episode, no, it's not Don't Say You Love Me, it's We're a Miracle by Christina Aguilera. There are some definite kind of similarities here, although I kind of feel like, to a certain extent, the verses are the other way around. Now, We're a Miracle not written for the first movie, but the first verse is the one that most directly ties to the plot of that movie, and the second verse talks more about the Ash-Pikachu relationship, again, despite not being written at all for that movie. This one is kind of reversed. The first verse is, obviously does tie to the movie because that's what the movie is about, but it is sort of the genesis of the Ash and Pikachu relationship, whereas the second verse has that sort of reference to the mountain, which is where the climax of the movie takes place. How do you sort of compare and contrast those two songs, though?
This is a good question. And yeah, I definitely think there are very similar vibes in this song. It's one of those things, we talked when we did that first movie about how surprising it was that We're a Miracle tied so well to the movie despite not actually being written for it. And this one was much more obviously written for it and ties in a different way. I like that in both songs there's a specificity to, as you pointed out, the mountain, and there's things about like searching for a star, I could sail to the ends of the ocean, like very specific images that tie back to this movie and the series in general that were also present in We're a Miracle, even though, like I said, it was not actually written with that intention in mind. It still very specifically called things out. So I do very much like that parallel that these two songs are written in kind of a similar vein.
Yeah, and I think when we get to the part where we sort of decide which of these songs we like better, I think we'll have more to say in that area. Any other thoughts on I Choose You?
I was not, through the first couple minutes, not super on board with Haven's voice. Like, it's kind of got a very breathy quality that I'm not as fond of. But, like, as the song went on, she kind of won me over. So I'm very happy that she's doing a lot with the Pokemon music. Like, she's kind of on doing some other theme songs and other Pokemon music as a vocalist. And I'm starting to warm up to her and get to like her as a singer. So I'm very happy about this.
Well, maybe that ties into some of her other roles. I guess I should have mentioned this in our first part, is I did do a little research on Haven's pre-Pokemon roles, and she was involved in, Shrek the Musical, Winx Club, and one or two other things before she started working on Pokemon, which, not a complete surprise there. Since the show, the English dub is done in New York City, there tends to be a pretty good overlap between Pokemon and Broadway musicals and stuff like that. So there's a pretty good shot you can connect things that way if you so desire. So not a huge surprise to see that in Haven's resume.
Yeah, like she's just got a very interesting voice and a very nice quality that she brings to the song that, like I said, just kind of wins you over time. And I don't know, maybe there's something poetic in that. I'm not sure.
Keep listening for more from this interview.